is the Business of Reselling podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Oman. Welcome to episode 44 of the Business of Reselling podcast, and I have some very exciting news to share with you today, which is that we have won the eBay Canada 2024 Entrepreneur of the Year award. It's crazy. I've been holding back this news for a while because obviously they tell you before you can tell the public. So I'm not allowed to say anything until a particular date. And it so happens that I was planning to publish a podcast on the date that I am allowed to shout from the rooftops that we've won this award. And yes, so today I get to tell you officially that we have won, and we'll be heading over to Ottawa and doing a little trip there and meeting with eBay people and some government people, and it's going to be really exciting. I'm just over the moon about it. Like, we worked really hard over the past, obviously we've worked hard for like 10 years or more now, but the last 4 years have felt like this, I don't know, like we've gotten to kind of a different place in our business. As much as we're facing like a little bit of stagnancy when it comes to revenues and inventory sourcing, and I've shared all of those struggles with you on the podcast, the sort of pivot that had to occur, ever since the pandemic is something that, I feel like we've kind of like figured it out, and how to put the pieces in place to continue to scale, since all of that happened. And reselling used goods in general kind of took a little bit of a downturn after like the peaks of COVID and the pandemic. And I think a lot of resellers who got started reselling during that time were worried like about what was happening to their brand new businesses, like after things started getting back to normal, and there was a struggle there. And I think we all felt it. Like, we all felt this peak and we all felt it come back down. And of course, we face those problems at any scale. And so we've worked really hard to keep our business profitable, to keep it relevant, to try and figure out how to grow it. And this sort of feels like the culmination of that. So I'm going to talk today about the award a little bit, but I want to talk about sort of some context. I want to talk about resellers being recognized and acknowledged for their business contributions, their community contributions, their environmental contributions, and so much more, and just kind of dive into that. Like, as resellers, and this has come up before in the podcast, and it comes up in conversations that I have with resellers all the time. As resellers, we're kind of pretty used to being low profile. And I think some of us get into this business because it's low profile, and we can kind of stay that way. You can, if you choose to, you can do most of your business kind of like behind the, I was going to say the wall. That's not the right word. Sort of like, behind your keyboard, so to speak. You've got the eBay platform or whatever reselling platform you use kind of in front of you. And you really have a lot of control over how intimate you want to get with the public, with your customer base, with your brand. You have a huge spectrum of ways that you can operate this business. And if you want to just stay behind the scenes and remain relatively anonymous, you definitely can. But, even though we're used to being sort of low profile, the work we're doing, like the collective world of resellers, it's important. It's important for environmental reasons. It's important for historical reasons. We are waste diverters. We are saving history in so many ways. We're doing work that matters at whatever scale we're doing it at. The history piece of it, actually, I'm just going to go way off my script for a second. The history piece is something I haven't talked about a lot, but I think it's part of the allure of what we're doing as resellers. But like, think about all the reasons why that's so important. Like, keeping things out of the trash, keeping things from being discarded that have historical importance, whether that's at a local level, a regional level, whether they can help teach people about old technology, about military conflicts. There's just so many things that the physical artifacts of history that we rescue can help people learn. And that's really important. We actually have, I don't know why this just popped into my mind, like as just an example of that. We have in our warehouse a document that we got in a storage locker a long time ago. And it's like, I think it's like a promotional brochure for the city of Vancouver, or it's some kind of like municipal document talking about the city. But anyway, it's published in 1918. And in that document, it talks all about how um, Vancouver is becoming a totally unaffordable place to live, and the real estate is so expensive and has gone up so fast that nobody can buy it anymore. And it just makes me laugh how like the history has just repeated itself over and over and over again for over 100 years. Um, we sometimes sort of forget about that, and to have these physical items like in your hands that can sort of remind you about like what has happened in history, how history repeats itself in a fascinating way. It's really cool. Anyway, that's that side of it. I'm going to get back to the environmental and business part here, but I have talked about this on previous episodes where I've gotten really excited about the idea that resellers can, change the game when it comes to landfill diversion, that we're a key part of the circular economy that gets talked about all the time in governments, but is largely ignored. But, you and I were part of a pretty big industry, or a sub industry, maybe, but we're rarely included in conversations about waste reduction. And when you think about why, I mean, there's sort of a few possible reasons that come up. In episode 26, I did a whole episode about the stigma that some people attach to reselling, that it's gross or dirty or even dishonest in some cases. So, some people think of resellers as kind of like, people who go and sell at flea markets, or sell junk out of the back of a van, or dig through garbage to try and find things, which, like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of those things if you think about it. Binning valuable stuff out of trash, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good for business, and it's good for the environment too. There's lots of ways to do that, from dumpster diving to the way we do it, working with junk partners. You know, yeah, getting in, diving in, and finding the treasures and separating it from the actual trash in whatever context can get a little messy. It can be a little bit dusty. We all have these stories. Nevertheless, it's a means to an end. I think a lot of people too have had experience with dishonest resellers, or people who deliberately underplay the value of something that they're trying to buy so that they can get it at a lower price and profit more from it. You definitely see that. Sometimes there's negative competition among resellers, which I can't possibly understand why, considering that there's more than enough stuff in the entire world for all of the resellers that exist to be profitable with. But those were some of the things that I talked about in that episode, and I think that they may play into some of the reasons why the world of used goods and reselling doesn't really get discussed in the context of, like, waste reduction and circular economy and things like that. It's weird because it feels like it's actually at the core of it, but you don't hear about it, the type of business that we're doing, quite as much. Now, someone actually commented on that episode 26, which I've linked in the show notes if you want to check it out. And they wrote, this is on our YouTube channel. They wrote, "I've been struggling with this stigma as a full-time reseller, and I think it has been holding me back from my potential due to the fear of being seen." So interesting, right? Like, how many of you can relate to that? How many of you can think about a time when you were kind of like, well, I don't know how big I want to get. I don't know how much I want to tell people about this because I'm afraid that people might judge me. And they also wrote that a lot of people look down on things they don't understand, which that's a super important comment because it's absolutely true. A lot of times when people don't understand how a business works or how somebody is making money from something, they have a tendency to criticize it, whether it's out of jealousy, misunderstanding, or an unwillingness to see the benefit of it. So, maybe that's part of the reason why reselling isn't really talked about in this context. Maybe people just don't really understand our business model, because there are lots of other types of businesses that are part of this sub industry that are talked about, like antique stores. Antique stores are, the old version of what we're doing now. This was like brick and mortar, and they still exist. You know, they're essentially reuse facilities. They're taking old things. Sometimes they're fixing them up. Sometimes just simply placing them in a new retail setting with staging. And, in that setting, they can command elevated prices for it. It's a for-profit model. Nobody seems to have any problem with it. And it has an environmental benefit that I think a lot of people don't think about. Of course, we have thrift shops, used clothing stores, consignment shops, nonprofit initiatives like repair cafes. Thrift shops exist not just to provide us with cheap inventory, but as a service to communities of people who either can't afford to buy new or choose not to buy new. Used clothing stores, there are lots of them, and consignment shops. F is in Frank. I've got to give a shout out to Drew, who's built an incredible business on mostly used clothing, and repurposing old clothing into new threads. And basically any business that takes discarded items and resells them in some way is also part of this circular economy. I've been actually looking for a hobby because repurposing is something I kind of want to get into. And I was thinking, like, what am I going to do in my spare time that takes me away from work? And I was thinking I wanted to be creative and I wanted to like make something. And I started to think about, well, this repurposing idea or upcycling is kind of cool. And I've basically access to an unlimited source of bizarre and unique bits and pieces of items that I could turn into new products just as on a hobby basis. And I don't know if I choose to sell them later, then I do. But I've been thinking about doing that because I think there's still lots and lots of little items that exist in our warehouse that we don't resell because they don't have the value, but they're too cool to throw away. I could do something with that, and I could lean into this circular economy idea on my own by, being more creative. And I have a creative background. I've got a degree, minor in studio art, and I haven't done any creative work in a really long time. So, I was thinking about sort of being part of this initiative in kind of a new way by starting this like hobby on the side. And I was going to say hobby business, but I don't want to say that because not everything in life is about making money. Not everything, but maybe it will be. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing. But anybody who's taking these old or discarded items and turning them into new products is part of this circular economy. They're part of the types of businesses that can earn awards like we have. And they matter. We've met a person who takes old cassette tapes, cuts them in half, and then sews around them and adds a zipper and turns them into these little purses that she sells at festivals. I met somebody who was taking vintage suitcases and repurposing them into cat beds. We obviously sell old pieces of furniture to people who refinish them and then resell them as new pieces. Like, being able to resell to other resellers, I think also sort of extends and grows this whole world of this whole economy of used goods that I think really matters and is going to continue to matter more and more as the years go on. We also have lots of nonprofit initiatives that contribute to the circular economy, repair cafes like the Zero Waste BC initiative, where people can bring in like a broken toaster and learn how to fix it. So you get a skill and you get a like new toaster out of it. These are also super important things. And of course, no discussion about the circular economy and the reselling used goods sub-industry would be complete if I did not talk about Value Village, Savers, and Goodwill, which of course are doing this on a pretty massive scale. And of course, there are problems. VV has been widely criticized for positioning itself as a charitable organization through its marketing messaging instead of a for-profit company, which is what it is. But it's not the for-profit model that's the problem here, because we are all doing the same thing, just as at a much smaller scale. It was really the messaging that was a problem. And despite that, thousands of people are donating their used items to Value Village and Savers and Goodwill every day, knowing full well that they will be resold. Maybe the people who donate see it as supporting others who need to buy things at lower prices. However, as we've all seen, Value Village has also been widely criticized for raising its prices higher than the general public will accept. So when I think about that, and as you know, like my kind of mandate is to figure out how to scale our business to a bigger place than where it is. I don't intend to ever be as big as Value Village, but somewhere modestly in between. Um, I'm starting to think about like what kind of stigma is a business at that scale and at that level of publicity experiencing versus what we experience as small scale resellers. I also think about how I wonder how much of Value Village's donated items actually make it to the floor or eventually get discarded. Um, w- One thing I know is that not everything can make it to the floor because unscrupulous people donate garbage all the time. That's why they have a big bin out back and they have to put things in there. I'm starting to do more research into this, but I don't really know enough to talk about it yet. But I have to mention that these two companies, Savers and Goodwill, are, they're doing what we're doing on a scale that most of us don't even really comprehend. And it does make an impact, all criticisms aside, it makes an impact in an environmental way. If you think about it, where would all of that stuff go if companies at that scale couldn't accept, thousands or millions and millions of pounds of it? Probably no other company is reselling used goods at such a massive scale. We can look at their quarterly financial results, which I've linked in the show notes. I'm going off on maybe a little bit of a tangent here, but I just want to talk about this, the importance of this and the potential of how big reselling can be. If in their quarterly highlights, which I believe came out after March of 2024, they had shown a significant increase in their net income up to over 43 almost $44 million for the quarter ended December 30th, 2023. However, their year-over-year revenue or net income, I'm sorry, was actually down quite a bit. They are still opening stores. I guess they had 22 store openings across all of their geographical areas scheduled for 2024. I don't know how many of those have completed, but this is absolutely huge. This is absolutely huge. The world of reselling, and it really speaks to the ongoing demand for used goods, which seems like it's only going to increase with the economic and environmental issues that all of us are facing that are never going to go away. If I'm being honest. Anyway, the point I want to make is that your work matters, my work matters. All of the work that we're doing as resellers is important in sort of this global quest for greater environmental responsibility. And we deserve to be recognized more publicly for that. So I'm super proud that we have gotten this award and that we can amplify that message a little bit more from our end. But the way I think about it is like this award is kind of like, this is kind of for all of you. Like this is kind of like a really public way of saying like reselling is important. The work is important. It's not doesn't have to just be a hobby business if you want it to be something bigger. Um there doesn't need to be a stigma attached to what we're doing. We can shout it proudly that what we're doing is environmentally responsible, it's fiscally responsible, it's restoring and preserving history, and we should keep doing it. So this award is kind of for all of you. Um, if you see opportunities to apply for business awards or grants, the Entrepreneur of the Year award, which, they'll do more of them next year. eBay also has up and running business grants, which is, I think, just for US sellers. But they have all kinds of financial incentives with that program as well. Like, never think that your business is too small to deserve that, or that you don't qualify, or that what you're doing isn't impactful, because it is, and it may be more than you think. So apply for EOY next year. Apply for the Up and Running small business grants if you are in the US. Any award or any grant that you find, just send in your application. You just don't know if you will win. And just be proud of what you're doing. And if you're comfortable with a little higher profile than you currently have, do this. It's honestly a lot of fun, and you deserve it too. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I have linked the press release in the show notes. So please check it out. I would encourage you to share this, but I encourage you even more to apply for these awards every single time they come up, because you deserve one too. So that's all for today, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks with an all new episode. And I don't know what it's going to be about. If you have ideas, please let me know. Leave a comment. I'm happy to talk about whatever you want to learn about. Otherwise, I'll pick something fun off of my list, and hopefully you will enjoy it. So that's it. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon.